Hello and welcome back inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 795. It's Todd.
No, Todd, not now!
AKA Negative Camber. You know why I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do tonight. For your kind consideration, we're going to cover some F1 news because there was some F1 news. But before covering that F1 news, I do have to introduce my guest. You know what I do on off-race weekends. I go all the way to our nation's capital. You know where you're lovely. It's the lovely, the redoubtable
Grace!
Grace, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Todd. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, but you know, let's just get this out of the way right up front, shall we? Let's just give you an opportunity to laugh, knee slap, and guffaw about Ferrari's strategy in Hungary, being the McLaren fan that you are.
It's hard. So first of all, it's hard because McLaren, being a McLaren fan, you have such low expectations and they kind of just sustain. Whereas Ferrari, it's a very roller coaster, especially this season.
Yes.
So I don't have that kind of like roller coaster. I'm just like, we came in 7th and 9th. Good job. All right. You know, it's not like we were first and we put on the hards and that was a terrible idea. Right. So,
Right.
so yeah, but I feel for him because again, as often happens, I feel like McLaren is the woman who everybody dates and then they date another guy and that's who they marry. The guy marries that woman. Right. I'm sure there's some phrase for that. Right. But that's McLaren. Everybody comes to McLaren and then they go to Ferrari and they get married to Ferrari. Right.
Right.
So, you know, we had Kimi, we had Alonso, and now it's Carlos. And it's just like, could you
Right.
guys, just for the sake of Carlos, get it together? Get it together.
I know.
Ah.
Poor Carlos.
But again, a win for Carlos is a win for McLaren. So I'll take it.
Well, yeah.
Not that happened in Hungary, but, you
A
know.
win for Carlos is a win for humanity, really.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's how you got to look at that.
But yeah, I feel for you guys. I wish
It's
I had
tough.
more haterade. Like, I wish I could, but it's just like,
I know.
It's hard.
And it's bad enough being a Ferrari fan, and then I make these I'm just doggedly sticking to Ferrari in my fantasy picks. And then, after the race, I look at my fantasy picks and I'm like, it's terrible. Oh, it's killing me.
Speaking of that yelling, why is it that they were like, so Charles Leclerc was like, I didn't know my radio was on. I didn't intend for people to hear that. The FIA decides who hears these radios. It's not as if it's, you know what I mean? Like, somebody decided on a 3-second delay, we needed to hear that. It's not like random. It's done for, strategic
Entertainment value.
Right. Television strategery is why it's done. And so it was just really interesting. It's like, I didn't know my radio was on. Like, that's not on you, buddy. Like, you just ran into a wall. I don't think my radio being on or not is my biggest concern at that point.
Right.
Maybe they shouldn't have chosen that radio to play.
I know.
But
Yeah, it's all hand-picked.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And but they act, because I always think that's it's interesting too, right? Because the Sky Sport, Crofty and whoever's with them always does the like, oh, well, that was, of course it was interesting. They don't play it all, right? They only play the interesting stuff. They only play the entertainment strategery radio. They don't play
the mundane stuff.
Right. So of course it was interesting. That's why they played it.
Yeah, it adds drama, intrigue.
That's right. Right.
You know?
Because I don't know if they actually, like, in NASCAR, you can just, like, listen. IndyCar, too, right? You can just, like, listen to your guy's radio, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that they do. I don't know that you can do that.
I think the
in
F1
Formula
TV app, if you're doing onboards, I think the radio comes over that.
Yeah. So, then there you go. So then somebody at Sky, they could make Ant Davidson do it. What else is that guy doing, right? At the Sky
Right.
pad? Why isn't he just listening to their radio?
Well, he is listening to all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he could give some context to this, but I don't know. You just slammed into a wall. I don't think I left my radio on, I don't know. We'll forgive you this time, right? Like, I don't know. That just seemed like a crazy comment. It's all right, man.
It's all right, man. Look, he said exactly what I felt,
Yeah.
and a lot of Ferrari fans felt, no,
I think collectively everybody does. I just don't, it's too hard. Like, if it's Red Bull, I totally have the like, yeah, Red Bull's out. That's great. I can't muster it up for Leclerc and for Carlos. That's the problem.
I know. Did you catch? I posted on our website and linked it back to YouTube. That Charles had a video he did, like 24 hours with Charles and Monaco. So it was kind of fun to watch.
Is that the one where he played like pickleball with his brothers?
Paddleball, yeah.
I watched part of that.
And he did the like cryotherapy thing. Yes. I don't know what those damn things cost, but Paul Charsley needs one.
Yeah. I just think the idea that he's talking about, oh yeah, you know, my brother's competitive. I'm like, I watched a video of like Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris and George and Alex Albon playing Rocket League together, and Charles Leclerc is yelling at them because they're not playing Rocket League competitively enough, right? Like,
very
you guys might be a little competitive if you're just playing, you know, Rocket League against some strangers, and you're getting mad that Alex isn't playing the game right, you know?
Yeah, I think
it might be
fierce competitive streak.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't think he can't. There is no off. There is no
I
like,
don't think so either.
Medium aggression. It's just all competitive aggression, right?
Yeah.
He's definitely that kind of guy.
Well, there's been some news this week, Grace, believe it or not. Some big news. So,
like Monday morning last week, like the first day of summer break, it was just like, what?
I know.
And especially because now anytime I see something, I'm like, I have to like cross-check it with like 3 legitimate sites. Like, was the race carrying it? What about Autosport? Is Sky carrying? Because I believe nothing, right? It's just like, how many legitimate news sources do I have to go to before I think this Alonso announcement is for real?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was weird. So you had a couple weeks ago, you had Sebastian Vettel saying that, you know, that's it. I'm done. I'm retiring.
Can we talk about that video? I know I'm interrupting you, but
I know. Did you see? I posted. I said it looks like a hostage video to me.
I was gonna say, was it shot in the same place that Toto Wolff shot his video? Like all that was missing was a black turtleneck. Like
I know.
It was very weird, and it was like I felt all the emotions. Like
I know.
It was like a rom-com and like a 10-minute goodbye video, right? Like
I know.
You laughed, you cried, go be with your children, don't leave my sport. What do you do? You know, it was everything.
Yeah, it was weird. You know, but you know, it kind of comes with the territory. You remember a couple years ago when, what was it when? I was trying to remember now. It was Aston Martin. Remember when Lawrence came on and had that big? I mean, that was like a hostage video too, where he was defending Aston Martin, and you know, I strongly object, and blah 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 blah. And so then, you know, that was weird enough. And then you had Seb. And it was just so weird. You know, it was all black and white, sitting on a stool, and you know.
I mean, it was just like the way he walked in. It was like, it's a dating video. It's you know, at first I was like, oh, if he says he likes long walks on the beach, it totally felt like an old school dating video.
Right, it did. So yeah, that
like
was
if
weird.
If Chuck Woolery rolls out here, we'll know.
Right.
The gig is up.
Right.
Very weird, but yeah.
So you've got that. And so there was that video. Then there was on Monday, last week on Monday, then you had Alonso out of nowhere surprising everyone, saying that he's leaving Alpine. He's going to Aston Martin to take Sebastian's chair. And everyone's like, whoa, okay, let's get our heads around this. And, you know, it's kind of funny watching. It's almost fun just to kind of watch the media. It's almost like winding them up and just letting them all go. And so it's funny to watch. Yeah, it is like, and it's, so the initial was like, okay, so initial stories came out with the press release. This is what happened. He's going over there. Then everybody lets that sort of steep for a few minutes. And then social media starts getting shocked. And they're all, you know, all the fans are freaked out and say, oh my gosh, this is unprecedented. It's like, no, it's not. This is Formula One. This happens. And they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that he's moving over, you know. So then you kind of have all these DTSians, you know, that aren't familiar with silly season. And so it's surprising to them and some not. But, and then you get the wave of you know, the well, actually, this is a good move, and actually, it's a really bad. So it's all the hashtag actually stories. Some, coming out say it's terrible. Then, the first knee-jerk reaction is that's a really weird decision. But then you're going to have the people who immediately come out with the counter side of every argument. And so I'm sitting back just watching these waves of stories come out, and justifications of why it's good, why it's a shit decision. It's just been funny to watch, as only Alonso could do, Grace.
I just thought, and then when Otmar was like, how am I finding out about this the same way you guys are, right? Like,
Right.
I just envision him going, what? Is this carried on the race? Does Sky News have something? Like, I don't know. It was just it was strange. It was like, a silly season happens, but usually we get to like next week. Usually people take a week off and we kind of calm down. But no, it was like Monday, hot off the presses, Alonso's like out. And that was just crazy. Although I just think Fernando Alonso and Larry Stroll, they're either going to like get along or not get along. There's going to be no in between. Well, that's what I mean. Like they're very similar. So then it's either going to be perfect because they see eye to eye and they understand each other, or it's going to be completely not going to work. But he knows that.
Yeah, you got to think Alonso knows that, but I don't know that Larry knows what he's buying.
Well, that could be true, but Alonso knows what he's
Alonso knows what he's doing. So I'm not sure anyone thought that Alpine wouldn't work a deal out with Alonso.
No, right.
But they had Oscar Piastri waiting in the wings as their reserve driver, and they may have felt that they had the upper hand with Alonso. I'm assuming the thought was, we'll do another year with Alonso. We got Oscar here. Do another year with Alonso. Then we'll give him a little departure, a partying, a consolation prize where we'll move him over to our Alpine in WEC when that car's ready.
Right.
And this would be good. And that'll give him, a future in sports car at Le Mans. And we'll get Oscar in, so we'll do a year. And I think Fred was like, the heck with your year. I want a multi-year deal. Wasn't happy with it, and decides to leave. Now, having said that, I don't think Alonso is the kind of guy, he doesn't want to be cornered in.
No, I clearly nobody told Alonso that was their plan, right? I think that we often treat drivers, not we, like team owners. I mean, same thing happens in every sport. We act as if people don't have a say in their own life just because they're athletes. That Alonso he would be so gracious to accept Alpine's 1 year. And then you're right, I'll just go to pasture and sports cars. And that's my hopes and dreams because I'm like 41 years old and surprise. He didn't really think that was the right plan to do. That's not how humans work. You can't just say, Todd, this is what I think you're going to do tomorrow. You're probably going to go, I don't think that's what I'm doing tomorrow. So that's exactly what Alonso did. That they had big plans, but nobody cleared them with Alonso first.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he did the deal with Aston Martin. Now, this leaves Alpine quickly trying to consider, okay, what's our replacement? And to those ends, Alpine comes out and announces that Oscar Piastri will be driving their driver. He'll be their driver for 2023.
All right.
Right?
Yep.
And so you're like, oh, well, okay, I guess that makes sense. He's a reserve driver. He's under contract. Great. Well, wait a sec. Oscar wasn't too keen with that announcement, saying that it was done without his approval, that the team made this announcement, and he would not be driving for Alpine in 2023.
I love that somebody literally got the screenshot of like Alpine announcing it, and then right above it is Oscar's like, if you see the announcement from Alpine, I didn't agree to that, right? It was like right in the same screen. I'm like, internet, beautiful job.
Right. Yeah, it's bizarre. So he wasn't too happy. So the conventional wisdom now has Oscar joining McLaren. And while Alpine says that they legally feel like they have Oscar locked into 23.
Whatever, that doesn't matter anything.
There is was apparently a clause about a date in late July that it had to be signed. Now that's according to Adam Cooper over at Motorsport.
Which
Adam's generally on target. So
which Alonso waited like 1 day and
exactly.
then announced it. I was like, this is great. Alonso,
yeah.
Oh, that was perfect. That it was like the day after that date, and he was like, "Oh, by the way, I'm leaving."
Yeah. So
beautiful.
And I think it was Adam who wrote it. So over at, I think it was Motorsport Magazine, maybe. So go check out the article of how Alpine got duped in the Piranha Club. I'm pretty sure it was Adam. If it's not, I apologize to the author, but I think it was Adam. And it was an interesting story about, so here are the players. Alonso, managed by Flavio Briatore.
Yes.
All right. Oscar, managed by Mark Webber. All right. So Flavio, for all you veterans, you know how Flavio is. He's an operator, right? He's a player.
Yeah.
Right. And I see, if memory serves, I don't remember, did he manage Mark?
Yes. I'm pretty sure.
I think maybe he did.
So Flavio, I also think that he gets it because he's like the low talker from Seinfeld, right? And that's how we all end up wearing pirate shirts, because we didn't hear what he said. He just like mumbled something, and next thing you know, you don't want to be a pirate, right?
Right.
Jesus Christ.
That's Flavio.
Yeah.
So Flavio, somebody was saying, wow, I think Mark Webber orchestrated this whole thing. And I'm thinking, it may have been Flavio, because this is the kind of thing he would do.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
This is right up his alley.
Like,
this is in his wheelhouse.
The rest of us joined like a bowling league or learned how to crochet. This is what he does. This is his fun, right? This is his, like his side job, right? For a little stress release, right? Like let's manage Alonso into some craziness.
He didn't fall for the macrame classes. He went right into contract negotiations.
Right. That was great.
Anyway, so you've got Flavio managing Alonso, Mark managing Oscar, and all of this was orchestrated. And I would imagine that date, late July, if true, that date was a key thing to drag some feet on, because it would have been the trigger allowing Oscar to sign with McLaren, move over there, and Alonso to bail out and leave Alpine high and dry, basically, right? So the interesting part of that is, like I said, if Adam's right, it does seem like Alpine got played by Flavio and Mark. And now the question is, and flying all over with the rumors, is who is Alpine's actual driver for 2023 going to be, right? Now, many believe that Piastri is going to McLaren to replace Daniel Ricciardo. So logically, they say, well, it's just logical that Dan will come back to Alpine. I'm not so sure about that, because Dan didn't part ways in a very good way with Alpine when he left to go to McLaren, right? Or Renault, Alpine Renault.
Yeah.
And
although it was different people, much like Ron Dennis versus Zach Brown,
it's different thing and different, people. So, maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know about that, but because I was reading an article over at Motorsport about why Dan is struggling with this car, and the things he said in that article really does give me the impression that his days in F1 could be numbered. So I'm not so sure about that. This leaves a possible, you could say, well, what about Pierre Gasly? Frenchman, French team, makes a lot of sense, but Pierre's got a contract with AlphaTauri through 23.
And they hate each other.
So I don't know,
Like, I think if you put Gasly and Ocon at a team together, I always talk about, Valentino Rossi at Yamaha. Like, you thought that was a bad situation. Oh, you've not seen anything if those two are on a team together.
Could you imagine two French drivers at a French team? I mean, that would be really, really difficult to manage.
Yeah, and again, especially because they hate each other, so that's a problem.
Right. So there you got Gasly. So I just
think there's the soap opera part of me loves that idea, but it's a terrible idea.
Yeah. So who else? Well, there's Mick Schumacher out there. Now he's had long ties with Ferrari, though. Not suggesting that if Haas dumped Mick that he would go to Ferrari. I'm not suggesting that, but I don't know. I don't know where
I would stay at Haas. I know this feels like a very strange thing, but especially this year, I think if I was Mick, I'd stay at Haas. Alpine, Alpine is like, as Paul Charsley said, they never are full send. They are not.
Yeah,
they never have been. They never will be. So at least Haas is trying. Wouldn't I rather be at a team that is finding some success with no upgrades and is willing to fully send it than Alpine that's always middled in the same place and refuses to ever put both feet into the fire, or whatever metaphor works here.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a point. I mean, if they're struggling and a middling team,
year after
what would
year,
that do for Mick's career?
After year. I mean, they haven't been successful since 2004.
Yeah. Because right now, Mick could say, yeah, but I am a good driver. I'm just in a crap team.
Right. It's George, right?
Right? Yeah. But if he went to Alpine and they're running in the middle trying to fight McLaren, and it didn't go well for Mick, he has fewer excuses, I think. You know? And
I think
not that he needs them, I'm just saying.
But I think he's finally starting to come into, a place with Haas.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the last 2 years have been a real struggle for him. And so I think he's finally scoring points. He's finally being more consistent. So I think that he's finally, broke that, got the monkey off his back. I don't know what the metaphor is here, but he's finally hit that point where he's starting to find success.
Yeah.
I would just stay with Haas and just kind of wait it out. I don't think Alpine is good.
So there's other junior drivers out there. They could take an option on one of them. But, on the flip side of the whole McLaren side of this, it does make you wonder what Zach is going to do with Colton, Alex, and Oscar on the payroll. I mean, I know he's got an IndyCar team, but surely all three of those drivers want to be in F1. Yeah, right. So, I don't know who said it. Maybe it was Flip had posted or retweeted something that basically said that, Zach's concept was to buy up all the drivers so nobody could have them, right?
Yes, right.
Yeah.
I have everybody.
So he's got 3 high-profile drivers there. He's got to figure out what he's going to do. I think at the end of the day, if it were me, given what options I have, and I don't know what options Alpine might have on junior drivers, that may be the first option because they've got Esteban, right? So that may be the first and most affordable option. If not, I do think I'd probably go for Pierre over Dan.
I think as a talent, yes, but I think having 2 French drivers at a French team isn't going to bring you enough sponsorships in.
Be tough.
You already got that with Ocon. Plus, in case I haven't mentioned it, they don't like each other, and that seems to be a problem.
Right. Yeah. So that's interesting.
I think they have to bring in a junior. Oh, I think they have to bring in a. Yeah, because I mean, I think that makes the most sense, right, for your team, and it's the least messy. Anybody else you bring in is going to bring hope and expectations, right? If you bring in a junior driver, I'm just happy to be here. I'll put up with your BS.
And they make him with some cash, which always hurts or helps.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right, exactly. So I think that's the least messy of your options.
Yeah, you're probably right. So talking about McLaren, so now we got this issue with McLaren. If Oscar's going to McLaren, which many feel that's a done deal, I read some stories saying just before the summer break, rumors have it that Dan's been already told that Oscar's coming to take his place. Okay, so how do they make Dan go away? At this point, they got to get rid of Dan. If they're going to take on Oscar, they got to get rid of Dan. Now, here's the problem. Dan has a contract through next year.
And nobody told Dan. Apparently, Ricciardo didn't get the memo if that's the case.
Right. So, if Dan wants to stay in F1,
right?
Would it be best to actually work with the team, McLaren, to try to get some sort of deal made to move him back to Alpine or another team with McLaren's help? Like saying, okay, I got a contract for next year. You want to bring Oscar in. I get it. But part of the thing is you got to work with me to find me a different ride if he wants to stay in Formula One. That's one choice. On the other side, Dan may feel that he doesn't need their help, and he could say, I have a contract, and try to get litigious about the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's an option. McLaren could decide to pay Dan the balance of his contract and some sort of premium for not driving, as I assume his contract has something in it that says, he must, if as long as he's physically able, he must be in the seat. So it's not enough in these driver contracts say, yeah, you're our driver, but we're just going to bench you. That doesn't work in the contract. It says you're driving. Now, I did see several comments on the gram and on Twitter, and I suspect they're newer fans of Formula One. And they're acting, why is all of this? This is crazy. All this drama going on, right? But it's really not. It's not crazy at all. This is silly season. That's why they call it silly season. So you just go back to 2009. This isn't that far back. Back in 2009, Ferrari paid a reported 20 million pounds, not dollars, pounds, to make Kimi Räikkönen go away. Right. So they could get Alonso over the team. Now, Kimi just didn't seem to have the fire that he had previously when he won the title there in 2007. And Ferrari found that Felipe Massa was more than competitive with Kimi, so they were fine. They wanted to get Alonso. Alonso's hot property. They did this, and this is what they chose to do. Said, look, Kimi's really making us mad. He's just phoning it in, and we want Alonso. So what's it going to take to get rid of you? And 20 million pounds is rumored to be what it took to get him to leave. Now, when he left, I do believe in that agreement, there was something like he couldn't go drive for another team for a couple of years, and he was gone out F1 for a couple of years, and then he came back. So this is part of the concern for Dan, in that reading an article over at Motorsport, he said in that article that he just isn't comfortable with the new cars. And I'm thinking, well, you spent 2 years at Renault/Alpine trying to figure them out and get comfortable with them. That didn't work either, right? And now you got 2 seasons McLaren trying to do the same thing. And I guess my point is, I'm not sure he's going to figure these cars out. And if he can't figure the car out, then helping, like, we should really get Dan because he's a veteran. He'll help us develop the car. Really? Because, I don't know. And I'm not trying to, to take the stuffing. And look, I wore a number 3 down here. You can see on my shirt, I got number 3. I'm representing Dan. I don't know where he goes. And I'm kind of thinking McLaren pay him just to go away.
Maybe.
Unless he wants to get litigious. He is the honey badger.
He is the honey badger, but I don't know. It just seems to be not. I mean, like Zach Brown did say, we told Ricciardo it's not safe, but there's been no discernible anguish at the team, right? Nothing surprises me, right? I guess it wouldn't surprise me if that's exactly what happened. That happened. It's Formula One. Contracts aren't worth crap in this sport, but it just seems there's no gnashing of the teeth that usually comes before this happens, right? Like when Ferrari got rid of Kimi, we knew that was coming. There's a lot of gnashing of the teeth. There just doesn't seem to be that happening in McLaren, that they're just going to dump him. I don't know. It just seems I don't know where they're going to put Oscar, but it does seem like a weird thing. They really don't want to dump Ricciardo unless our hand is being forced. I don't know.
I don't think Oscar would take a reserve role at McLaren.
No, because at some point,
if he had an option to drive in Formula One for Alpine or be a reserve at McLaren, I think he would drive.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
because he's also, not going to be a spring chicken for long, right? So you've got to get you have to at least be in a Williams, right? You've got to be out there.
Yeah.
And because pretty soon nobody's going to care that you won F2. It's just not going to matter. So I agree that that does lead credence to him to go into McLaren. It just kind of, there's some part of me that, not that I would be surprised by it, but there just doesn't seem to be a lot of anguish before that happens.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a part thinking, well, Dan, he's got a contract. He could get litigious, and you think, well, yeah, but, that's ever going to work. Well, it has.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you when. So if you veterans out there, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're newer to Formula One, this is fun to go look up. And especially if you can find some news reels from then on YouTube. So one of the more memorable contract issues of recent day was that of Guido Vandergaard. And all the veterans are going, oh, that's right. They remember, don't you? You remember what I'm talking about, don't you? So he was Sauber's reserve driver, but in his contract, he had a contract to be one of their 2 drivers for the 2015 season. So he was, in his contract, promised a seat, right? Ultimately, Sauber decided to go with Marcus Ericsson, the Swede, and Felipe Nasser, right? So Guido was not happy about this. He took issue, and he took the matter to the Swiss Chambers Arbitration Institution, and they ruled in favor of Guido, saying that he must be in the car as one of the team's 2 drivers for 2015. All right, you think, whoa, okay. So he went to arbitration, and they ruled in his favor. Despite that, Sauber said, no, Nasser and Ericsson are the drivers at the first race. And on the Monday before, they said this, on the Monday before the season opener in Australia. So back then, folks, for all of you veterans out there, you remember, right? We were all watching this, and it came on that Monday, and Sauber said, nope, it's Ericsson and Nasser. We're thinking, oh, wow, where is this going to go? You know, because you have Guido showing up at the gates in Australia ready to run, right?
He's like running his badge through the turnstile, right?
Yeah, it's like, not getting in. He's thinking, what the heck? And he's ready to drive, right? So Guido, at that time, on that Monday, filed for an urgent application to the Victorian Supreme Court in Australia. Now, the Victorian Australia, in general, is signatory to the Convention of the Recognition of Enforcement of Foreign Arbitral Awards. Now, what does all that mean? That means that they had to enforce the ruling of the Swiss Arbitration Group because they're signatory to this agreement. So now you have this situation where Guido is basically outmaneuvering Sauber. He says, A, I have a contract to be one of the 2 drivers. You're not letting me in, and you're not doing anything, and so I'm going to file an injunction. Now, come Friday, Sauber didn't run. They ran no Friday free practice on the season opening Grand Prix when everybody was running.
Everybody runs. You got to, right?
You got to, right?
They're like, nope, we're not going to.
We're not going to run. So they don't run, and they appeal to the Supreme Court that Guido lacked the preparation and experience in driving the current car because he didn't drive it in preseason testing, and that would be a major risk to himself and others.
Right.
So that's what the team decided to argue to the Supreme Court. The appeal was dismissed, and there was a moment in time, I kid you not, you veterans will remember this, there was a moment in time when Grace and I were watching this, we had probably podcasts on it you could find, but we were watching this thinking, on Friday up to Saturday, literally they were going to impound or seize Sauber's assets. The cars, the garage, they were going to lock the team out of the garage. They were going to seize all the assets. In fact, the team boss, Monisha Kaltenborn, could and was possibly going to face jail time, folks, if they didn't put him in a seat. And at the 11th hour, Sauber sat down and basically worked it out, and they paid Guido to go away.
Here's some money.
A lot of
nice
money.
Vacation.
Yeah, it would have been a lot of money. And he basically showed up. I was a little surprised, but not. I mean, he took it all the way down to the 11th hour. I mean, he literally was rubbing the team's nose in it all the way down, and then he just took a lump sum payment and walked away. I thought it would, you have to think that relationship would have been so toxic. They would not have wanted him in that car. Nope. And that would have been a horrible situation. Oh, yeah. So at the end of the day, he fought it to make a point out of principle, took the money and walked away. So don't be surprised if Daniel feels like he has a solid contract, if he Guidos him.
Yeah.
and tries to take it all the way down to the wire. It would not surprise me, and it is not unprecedented.
No, and I think that's the thing is that silly season. I mean, again, I think what surprised me was not that this happened, but that it was like Monday morning it happened, right? Like we didn't even take a breath before it happened, right? And Alonso was out there, and so it happens. Like I said earlier, contracts are worth nothing in Formula One. Like they're barely worth the paper they're written on. If there's enough money, they'll get out of it. So yeah, and it could, and which is unfortunate. I think I don't. Unlike perhaps Guido Vandergaard, Ricciardo, I don't really think he's ready to be. He's not ready to be gone, but I don't think the sport is ready to see him gone. I don't think that. Yeah. Unlike Kimi, who is just like, fine, I'll go race trucks and NASCAR. I don't need you guys, right? Like, I don't know that we're kind of ready to say goodbye to Ricciardo, and I don't think that he's really ready to say goodbye to us.
Right.
But, if you're going to pay me a lot of money to disappear, fine, I'll be gone.
I know.
I don't know.
Well, it's and by the way, Grace, you know this. Guido is one of the funniest guys on Twitter.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If you don't follow him Guido Vandergaard,
he's good.
Absolutely go follow him because he is hilarious. He's very funny. So all of this is normal, is my point. So I know that if you're a DTSian out there, a newer fan, I know some of this gets a little confusing, all this moving around and all that. But
it happens.
It happens. And
it happens in every sport.
It does. It does. This is, like I said, it's called silly season. It happens every year. Some more dramatic than others. And that's usually when the big stars of F1 make big moves, like Lewis leaving McLaren to go to Mercedes, Schumacher leaving Benetton to go to Ferrari, Alonso leaving to go to Aston, right? It leaves big holes, right?
And especially because a lot of times silly season is often, like we always joke about, the worst kept secret since Ralph Schumacher moving to Toyota, right? Like sometimes we're just waiting. We know, and then we're all going to pretend to be surprised when that happens. We know it's coming. So that happens a lot too, that it's like no big surprise. But I think I'm not surprised that Alonso was leaving Alpine, but I'm just
that surprised me.
Well, I think when I found out that they were trying to like put baby in a corner and Alonso wasn't having it, right? But and especially for everything. I think he feels he's done a great service to Alpine, and Alpine feels it's done a great service to Alonso, and that just was never going to be happy, right? Like, if they both sides think, well, it is an honor that I'm associated with you, well, that's going to be a problem because nobody's going to give.
Right. Yeah, it's look, it's a tough situation for sure. I mean, and especially getting paid not to drive, as I mentioned with Kimi, it's happened before.
Yeah.
And while there are contracts, to Grace's point, they can be and sometimes are easily litigated or amended as long as there's a desire to do so or the dollars are present, right?
And we don't know. And that's the other thing too, right? We don't know all the details.
We don't. But, think about like Michael Schumacher, back when he got started, he stood in for Bertrand Gachot. And you say, well, okay, Bertrand was at Jordan. Why wasn't he driving? Well, go Google that one. He was in jail for assault. So Eddie Jordan had a driver that couldn't go to the Belgian Grand Prix because he was sitting in jail because he was arrested for assault. So they brought Schumacher in, and Schumacher was represented by Mercedes management at the time. And they paid Eddie Jordan $150,000 for the privilege of driving that Jordan, right? So Michael comes in, he drives that Jordan, and they had, Michael, along with Mercedes management, they had an agreement in principle to drive for Jordan for the rest of the season. But the very next race after the Belgian Grand Prix, Michael shows up in a Benetton.
Yeah.
Who is the manager at the time of the Benetton? That'd be Flavio Briatore.
That is correct. Again, much like how every great drama in the modern era involves Alonso, they also all involve Flavio Briatore.
That's right.
I'm just saying.
So, see how we're connecting all the dots there? Jordan tried to fight that with an injunction court, but they lost. Right. There's other things like Damon Hill. He wins the world championship and promptly dumped by Williams,
Yep.
having just won the title, right?
What else can a guy do?
Right. Schumacher shown the door at Ferrari to make room for Massa.
That was a disaster.
That was
Oh
that
my
was a
gosh.
bad move. You might also recall earlier this year Nikita Mazepin. His contract tossed out the window and he was shown the door at the start of this season, right? Nicholas Latifi, he is driving on a contract tied to investment dollars from his father. And while the opposite side of that coin, you think so you have someone like Latifi's father bringing a lot of much needed cash to Williams. That's why he's driving there.
Right.
On the flip side of that, you have sort of Sergio Perez and his money from Carlos Slim. Sergio is the only guy keeping Force India alive. Right. At that point.
Right.
So there's all of these different permutations and things that are going on.
Yes.
But it's common. It happens a lot. Some of the silly season and drama. I remember when I first got wind that he might go to Mercedes, I thought it was a brilliant move, and I was called all kinds of names, and people stunned. And when they refer to it, even now, they'll say, "Yeah, that big shock move to Mercedes." Like, shock move? That's not a shock move at all.
Have you met Ron Dennis?
Yeah.
I mean, things were
Ross
bad.
Braun? Yeah. I mean, are you kidding me? Going to Mercedes, you had Nico and Schumacher basically getting the car ready for the an evolution. They toiled and did all the hard, heavy lifting. That car was just about, it was thereabouts, with Ross Braun going in, changing all the rules to favor the hybrid and set it up for Mercedes. Lewis's timing was impeccable.
Yeah.
Just perfect.
No, I don't think that was this surprising.
Not at all. No.
Now I feel like I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this podcast because I probably said, "Oh my god, I'm so surprised."
Yeah, right. So I just anyway. So I thought we'd talk about that.
Of course,
what to do with the problem, like Dan.
Yeah, that was like when you tweeted. I assumed that you were referencing to the fact that the podcast was going to be carried by somebody different, but it did sound like you were replacing all of us, and it was just
no.
We finally have our biggest off-season story, and you've decided to fix the glitch. Great.
Yeah.
Now we're all being replaced.
No, and apologies for that for all the listeners out there. I should have said this at the beginning of the podcast because some people only listen the first 5 minutes and then they bail out and never listen again.
Well,
and I don't blame you.
What am I doing the other 2 hours of the show for if you're just going to listen to the first 5 minutes and bail out? But anyway,
those guys suck. They're such Hamilton sycophants. No,
I didn't read it that way, but it was just really funny that it could be read that way. That was like, that's how we fixed the glitch. Grace, guess what? You're not employed by us anymore.
No. So just to explain, we're moving hosting companies for the podcast.
There you go.
So we were on Podbean, and now we're moving to Spreaker. Okay. And so there's a post on our website where you can get the link. It should auto update in your podcast catcher. So whatever podcast listener you use, it should auto update because I put in a redirect. So, and what I did is the Podbean, I had that limited to only 100 episodes. So in order to move all of the episodes from Podbean over to Spreaker, I opened that up and there was like 400 and some odd episodes that got moved over to Spreaker, and conversely also opened up on Podbean. So the RSS feed for your podcast listener on your phone that was directed to Podbean, it would only have 100 episodes. But when I opened it up, 425 episodes came in, and you're probably like, "Holy crap! Where'd all these episodes come from?"
I'm so behind. Oh my gosh!
This is 2 years ago. What, idiot? So, but I did that because I wanted to move all of the content over to the new one. And in order to do that, I had to open it up on Podbean. So I apologize up front for basically, it's like U2. I feel like I was U2 slamming a bunch of episodes nobody asked for on their phone.
That's right. I bought a phone and your stupid album was on it. Not even a good one. Great.
Yeah, right. Sorry about that. I apologize, but it was one of those necessary evils to make sure that they all moved over.
Right.
So you can go, if you have trouble, you can go to our website or go to Spreaker, look us up, and you'll see the RSS feed. And you can get that RSS feed, and it should auto redirect and update on your podcast players. So if there's any issues, let me know. All right, getting the shop talk out of the way.
No, it's important stuff.
It is. So this is a cool story. So I was going through the gram, as the kids call it, and I saw these really cool pictures from Lewis in Africa. And he posted them on, what's that?
He's in Kenya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he posted this on the gram, and he posted these cool pictures, and he said, quote, "This year, I'm spending my summer break doing something I've wanted to do for years. I'm finally tracing my roots through Africa. And guys, to say this journey has been a groundbreaking experience is an understatement. This has been a change, a life-changing reset. I feel like I've gained a new perspective on life, grown an even stronger love for animals, and became even closer with my brothers who I've shared this special journey with," end quote. So he's having a great time, very soul-searching, very impactful. I think that's awesome. The pictures are super cool. I'm told Africa, I've never been there, but I'm told Africa is just stunningly beautiful. And so if you haven't seen the pics, go check them out because they're really cool. He's got pics with balloons. Like I can imagine ballooning over Africa. How cool would that be, right?
Well, I ain't getting in no balloon, but I'm sure it's really cool.
That would be kind of cool.
I ain't getting in no balloon.
Right. So now, and I'm sitting there thinking, so there's a tie-in to why we got to thinking about this. So I thought, now here's one of those places that I feel like Lewis could really make a difference. You know, he's pretty wealthy. He could invest if it moved him, if it was life-changing. There's a lot of places for infrastructure development, education, lots of different programs that are going on. Could do those through Mission 44 program. He's got a history of donating. I think at one point he donated, $500K to UNICEF. So he's got a charitable heart. So in this way, I thought this would be real cool to engage in sort of his historical roots and impacting beyond just social media awareness, because any influencer will tell you after doing a year or two of the whole social media awareness thing, it becomes kind of vacuous. You know, it just, I'm using the platform for awareness. Okay. Yeah, that's great, but it gets a little vacuous at some point. And the reason I was thinking about this, so most of you know that I don't bicycle. I don't do that. But I'm a huge fan of the Tour de France. And for years I've been watching the Tour de France. And the commentary team for years was Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin. And Paul recently passed away, tragically. Now, I got to thinking about Lewis in Africa, and it reminded me of Paul. And Paul Sherwin, as I mentioned, a legendary Tour de France broadcaster. Paul was British, but he was born in Africa, and he lived in Africa. And he invested heavily in the local community in Uganda where he lived to empower, educate, elevate. And I feel like, maybe that's an opportunity for Lewis there. If he was truly moved by Africa, he could do that and make a tremendous impact like Paul was doing. In fact, he could work with Paul's organization. They're trying to build a vocational school for girls in Uganda through the Paul Sherwin Project. And so if you haven't checked out that website, you can go look at that, because even though Paul passed, he still has that project. And a lot of the cyclists during the Tour de France, they all contributed to that project. And I thought, well, that was really cool. And, Paul had a choice. He could have lived certainly a whole different life for sure in luxury. But, there he is out there in his shorts, his khaki shorts and shirt out there in the middle of Uganda on a bicycle, going on the dirt roads of Uganda. It was great. And made a big impact. So anyway, I just thought it reminded me of Paul Sherwin and all the terrific work and passion and love that Paul had for Africa. Sounded very much like that coming out of Lewis about the experience he's having. I thought this would be a great opportunity for Lewis, because he could make a huge impact there. Because I know Paul talked about it a lot, and what an impact his programs like that do. Anyway, so go check out those pictures. Did you see the pictures?
I did.
Yeah.
I also started reading his Vanity Fair article, but I haven't finished it yet. It's too long.
I haven't read
it was
that
really
yet.
interesting, though. I think if you are interested in Lewis or not. I think his interviews are always good. I think that, yeah, I would read anything he writes. I think he's a very compelling speaker. So I would recommend it.
There you go.
I've enjoyed it. Good insight so far.
So there you go, Lewis. I got it all figured out for you. I know you're big on fashion and fashion shows and stuff like that. But if you're moved by Africa, like many are, there you go.
I think he still has a place, and honestly, we may not know what he's doing. So,
yeah,
Well,
I know what he almost did, but I'll get to that in Albin's case.
I was gonna say he could give money to you. Oh, I mean, right? He could give money to UNICEF, and we just don't know about it. Much like contracts, right? Like just because he's not public about it doesn't necessarily mean that he's not doing anything, right?
Right.
So, but right on. He's got time.
Right. There you go. Also, Alex Albon announced that he signed at Williams. That's exactly right. Now this was hilarious.
That came out on like Tuesday. Like
yes. like the day after Alpine announced that Oscar was driving for him, and Oscar tweeted that no, I'm not. Alex announced that he would be driving, but what was hilarious is he tweeted almost word for word what Oscar said, except confirming that he said, and with his knowledge, they said that I'll be driving with him, which I agree. It was great. It was just Alex had like fun.
Right, and Yost Capito written all over that. Like that was just great. That was a great tweet, and I just like that it was like, well, it's not me.
Yeah.
Like, please, it's not my seat.
Yeah.
I don't know about Nikki, but it's not my seat.
Yeah. Yeah. I liked Williams and Alex kind of saying, so this is how you do a driver announcement.
Right.
It was great.
You talk to the team and you put out the announcement and everybody agrees. And
that's right.
That's right. That's right.
That was pretty funny. All right. Speaking of Albin's cats. Okay. It's a abrupt stop, wasn't it?
It sure was.
Yeah, it really was.
We were just getting into it, and
I know.
It's
a little odd. Yeah.
Like 5 episodes of Moon Knight. I just got into it, and it's done. Right.
I know. Hold on. I gotta do it again. Okay. Nice fade. Okay, there we go. All right, Grace, what do you got for us?
You're a professional.
I rise above it.
So, first of all, I would like to, speaking of Albon's cats, they just got 4 new kittens. So if you really just need a pickup, always a nice some cat photos from the Albon family. They always do a great job. So if you aren't listening, if you aren't on the gram, it's totally uncool once I say it. But anyway, if you aren't on Instagram and you aren't up on the Albon's cats, you should be doing it because they just got the 4 cutest little fluffy kittens. They're adorable.
There you go.
Being on that. So France. So I'm going back to France. So we had 2 races since my last podcast.
Yes.
And so I've often said that Stefano Domenicali listens to the show because every time we put out an idea, the next race they interview him and he's like, look at this great idea I have. Yeah, that was our idea, buddy. Thanks for listening to the show. Right. So apparently Lance Stroll also listens to the podcast because you may all remember that on the last podcast, I said about how how he should just lean into his Kimi Räikkönen-ness.
Yes.
And especially with Vettel being gone, just be the non-media personality that you are. Just lean into that and just be one answers, no fun Kimi Räikkönen kind of guy, right? Lean into that. So literally at France, he does the whole Kimi Räikkönen, I know what I'm doing, stop talking on my radio. I'm like, oh my God, you literally have you listen to the show, you've leaned into it. So from now on, I will refer to him as Lemmy Strikkinen. Because I do think that's let me strike it in. He's doing such a great job. So I think continue leaning into your Kimi Räikkönen-ness. I think it serves you well. It is the best thing you could do for this sport because we all miss Kimi. So
yeah, we do.
Just keep being that. But welcome, first time, long time. Thanks for listening to the show. So that's what I got coming out of France.
Nice.
And then Hungary. We talked about the Vettel retirement, it's dating profile, prisoner in a basement under a Mercedes video. We laughed, we cried, and we cried some more. But also, I really just want to put this out there. Lawrence Barretto, who does F1's coverage, right? You think after all these years, I finally remembered who works for F1 and who works for Sky, even though I often blend them all together. But Lawrence Barretto has amazing hair. And I think that he has a podcast already, but I'm just really waiting for him to have Bonato on. Don't talk about Ferrari, only talk about the hair. Have Carlos on, just talk about the hair. There has to be some great tips that I'm missing out on. I want to know, is Lawrence wearing a bump it? I don't know how he gets his hair like that. I just have so many questions for all of them. And every week, it doesn't matter how humid their location is. Bonato's hair always looks fabulous. It's curly. That's hard to manage, man. So I think Lawrence Barretto, if you also listen to this podcast, when are you going to just do the all hair podcast on your podcast and have Bonato on? I think that would be great.
Just talk about, what kind of products you use,
Right. There has to be some routine. Well, I can't believe that Bonato just rolls out of bed and his hair looks like that. Again, he has curly hair. That's not easy to manage.
He does.
So,
I know.
I don't know. So he's got to do that. And then I also think, Juan Guizhou, fashion icon. Who knew? I mean, all season. I mean, that guy's Instagram also, he's really bringing it. So, I mean, we often talk about Lewis Hamilton, and we don't have the Lewis Hamilton fashion anymore, but Zhou, he's really bringing it. So
we do need the Lewis Hamilton Fashion Award every once in a while.
Lewis Hamilton,
yes.
There's no stopping him. Lewis Hamilton, there's no stopping him.
Excellent, Lewis.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
That's right. So
yes.
Next time you're, at Spa, I'm sure Zhou will have something because it's one thing when like Yuki and Gasly, they're at the fashion team. So of course they're wearing fashion. And we all know that Lewis Hamilton's into fashion, but who knew that Zhou? Very fashionable.
Yes.
So
a fashionable guy.
Check that out. Oh, and then also, so I know that we often talk about the Formula One racing game, right? And all the drivers also, spend time in the sims. In the simulators, I really just want Carlos Sainz to go, well, not only do I spend a lot of time in the sims, but I also play F1 Manager a lot. And that's how I've become successful at Ferrari. I just have practiced a lot, both on the sims and playing F1 Manager. Right. And that's the full package that you need as a driver at Ferrari. So
that's awesome.
I think that's it, because I think when somebody strung together all the clips of all the drivers, just like talking back to the management, like, why would I do that? Kimi Räikkönen's my favorite. He's like, they're a mile away. Who am I undercutting?
Yeah.
They're like off in the distance. He's like, you've got to be kidding me. So I hope that in the off season, Carlos and Charles are playing some F1 Manager so that they can help the team with some of their strategery, because I think we all have a lot of questions there. So that game is there to help them sharpen their skills.
I like it. Let's see. In my Todd's No Shit headlines, I have this one up. Denver Broncos. Lewis Hamilton joins incoming ownership group of NFL team. How about that?
I wish it was my Steelers, but I'll take the Broncos.
Roscoe, I saw a football team.
Roscoe in his little jersey. It was super cute.
I
don't know. I have no affect one way or the other towards the Broncos. You might. Are they in your division?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. See,
much hate for the Broncos.
There you
much
go.
Hate. Yeah, as a Chiefs fan, no.
Yeah.
Another headline. Now you're gonna like this one, Grace.
Okay.
Lewis Hamilton was set to star as fighter pilot in Top Gun Maverick, but had to back out because filming clashed with F1 season.
Help me, Tom Cruise!
How about that?
What? Was he going to do the Val Kilmer role? What is...
Yeah. You're dangerous.
Yes.
That's right. Yes.
Well...
Are we sure Lewis can act? I actually don't. I take that back.
I don't know.
I know Lewis detractors say, yes, he does every weekend. So I take that back.
All right. Well, that's fair. He does put a smile on his face.
Yeah.
But Bonato also can act, apparently. So
yes, he can act like their strategy is fine.
I mean, I've totally derailed your story here, but I can't handle the positivity coming out of that team. It really is it baffles me. I think that is a part of Ferrari. I just can't. I'm used to the arm waving and the yelling and the like.
I know.
Oh,
that's what you're used to.
Exactly. But I
Yes.
just think this is okay. We're gonna get it together. He comes out and he talks to the press and he's all like
Very calm.
positive. I'm very perplexed by that.
I know.
It's not okay. It's very
I know.
weird.
As he's breaking the mold, as the Ferrari management, no arm waving, he's not doing any of that.
Although we did have a lot of fun, and I'm sure everybody else did viewing at home when they made the bad tire call, and then Bonatto just flees from the wall. And he's like,
Yeah.
Where's he going? Like,
Yeah. It's like, oh man, I gotta go. Yeah.
Right,
I need a comfort break.
Yeah, right. Like, is he getting something to drink? Does he need to go to the bathroom? Is he gonna go punch in some heads? Like, where are you going?
I think he went back to collect the money that Christian was paying him.
Something. I just thought that was great. Those moments, sometimes the stars just align, but when they were like off the wall he goes. And then he came back and it was like, and he was just calm again. So
well, you gotta go. You gotta go.
I don't know, something. It was not
That happens.
He was out of there.
Well, this is big news. A Singapore F1 track to be playable map in new Call of Duty game. So not only can Lando practice the Singapore Grand Prix, he can shoot up bad guys on his Twitch TV while practicing for both the race and for his gaming chops on Twitch.
He should just shoot Charles Leclerc. That would be great. Like, they should just race around the track on tractors.
Right.
And, with Alex and George. And that would be fun. I'd watch that.
Who wouldn't?
I don't know.
So there you go. That's odd.
I know that is a random piece of.
Yeah.
Strange. I mean, at least I guess there's some places to hide in Singapore. I mean, it's not like, like the desert tracks, which I often joke look like, day one of The Sims, where you're like, I have a track and some trees, and that's all I got.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why those races are at night, because then you don't notice that all I got is a track and the trees.
And the little box here.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how realistic. It'd be kind of cool if you could dip into the garage and see, Yost Capito there.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Like, Yost, shh, I bust a cap in you. Shh.
That's right.
I'm hiding.
That's right. I don't know. I don't know.
I'm sniping from in here. Shut up.
I had a friend that we used to play Halo. She would just, because it was really hard to get up the ladders in Halo. Again, this was like 10 years ago. I'm sure it's easier now, but it would be really hard to get up the ladders. So she'd just stand at the top of the ladders and shoot at you while you were trying to climb up the ladders. Like, that was Gianna's entire strategy.
That's it, camping.
Yeah, would just sit there and shoot at you because you eventually had to go up that ladder poorly.
Let's see next. Sebastian Vettel offered Formula E chance after announcing F1 retirement, with German pushing for environmental change. So see, there you go. People saying, hey, Seb, put the money where the mouth is. Big on the environment. Everybody loves you. How about coming over, racing in Formula E? It's sustainable. It's all electric, buddy. Bring it on over.
Except he's retired from racing. I don't think that helps him with his whole spend more times with the kids.
Yeah, well, probably wouldn't.
Save the bees, spill the tea. I don't think that's going to help him. But
maybe not.
But I think you would try. I think that absolutely the marketing opportunity, you would be a fool not to try to get him into Formula E, right? I think you got to try that.
So here's a funny thing. So if you're new to Formula One, this may come as a bit of a shock to you, but Sebastian Vettel was one of the most hated guys in the paddock.
Oh, yeah, I hated that guy.
Okay, most people did. I didn't.
I hated
but most people did.
Oh, yeah.
And I know you all really think he's a righteous dude and he's awesome, and maybe he really champions causes that you're close to, and that's awesome. But that's completely 180'd his reputation. And thankfully, with all the new fans who didn't know that you were supposed to hate him because of Multi-21 and for hitting Weber in Turkey and for winning everything and not being able to pass and only being able to win from the front of the grid, and he had the best car on the grid, and nobody, he couldn't really do anything unless he had the fastest car, and his annoying number one finger, on and on and on and on. This is the guy. Now, when he first came to Formula One, he was a charming, plucky little teen out of Germany that had that British sense of humor and grew up watching Monty Python. So the British press really loved him. But then when he was at Red Bull and started winning all of a sudden and winning championships and winning all the races and had all those clashes and that sort of stuff, then the British press turned on him. They hated him and everybody hated him. So I
always hated him.
Yeah, so that doesn't really work. And I met him a couple times. I've ridden with him a couple times. Super nice guy. And that's back when he was at Ferrari when everybody hated him. But remember, he clashed. He banged wheels with Lewis Hamilton, drove into him.
Think about the children.
Yeah,
Yes.
Baku,
Never
you know?
forget.
And
Never
it's like
forget.
it's like nobody remembers any of this. It's almost like F1 didn't exist until 2 years ago, you know? And
I
what's
think that-
really even more strange, now that I'm on a soapbox, you know, all this crazy fan crap, this stuff wasn't happening. All right. I've been watching this sport, going to this sport since the early 70s. Nobody was doing all this crap. All right. And now magically everybody's all upset with fan behavior and all this crap in Formula One and looking at all the veterans like we're the ones doing it. We never did any of this crap. This is all a new phenomena for us. We're thinking, what the heck? Who's doing this? You know? And then on the flip side, everybody said, oh my gosh, they bought Mercedes hats and they burnt them. Okay. If they want to spend $60 on a Mercedes hat and then burn it, I guess that's your choice. It's stupid, but whatever. But all of this stuff is just so blown out of proportion. It's just, everybody lighten up a little bit. It's just Formula One. That's my rant.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I guess.
Yeah.
I think if you feel, I don't know. I just don't think it's quite that straightforward. You know.
Well, I don't know. Maybe there's a lot of margins in this, but I really don't understand what the, I mean, it's like all the, I can't remember what race it was now. There's just a lot of really bad behavior. A lot of that stuff, you know? And I guess it comes with the popularity of the sport. As the sport's grown, it's brought in, you know, lots of different fans. And some people would argue maybe, you know, it's brought in football fans or whatever.
No, I
don't
also
know.
think there's a way to do
weird.
something about it. I don't think men behaving badly around women is new. It's just what were you going to do before? At least now there's some platform where you can say,
Well-
hey, Stefano Domenicali, Twitter, this is happening and maybe you should do something about it.
Okay, all right. So you tweet and you say somebody said something bad. Okay, so maybe they'll go check it out. Maybe they're going to be gone. That's great if there's a vehicle to do that. But it's not like this was rampant every single Grand Prix for the last 40 years. It hasn't been.
That we know of.
I think you would hear about it.
I don't know.
You would have heard about it. I'm not saying it never happened, but and having it, like you said, Grace, having a vehicle to report something or do something is great because it shouldn't happen. You know, it's horrible. So, and I guess that's my point. You know, it's just because you didn't hear about it for the last 30 years doesn't mean that it was rampant and you just didn't hear about it. But it also doesn't mean that it never happened. Both those things are very, you know, viable options here.
Right.
And you can't say, yeah, it was happening for 40 years and people were just as bad and you just never heard about it because it was totally accepted. I've been to a lot of races. There's a lot of folks have been to a lot of races. You know, if it was just as rampant as what it is being described now, which is horrible, you'd know about it.
Wasn't that in Austria though?
Yeah, it was. That's right.
Right.
The race was in Austria.
So, right. Surprise. We had this conversation in my household. I've never been to Austria. I've been to Canada. I've been to Austin. I've been to UAE. I've never
Right.
faced these problems, but that also doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
But it also doesn't mean that it happens at every single Grand Prix.
No, but
ad
it also,
nauseum.
no, right. Neither
Yeah.
extremes aren't going to help this, but
That's what I'm saying.
But what I'm saying is that I think F1, I think this goes back to the whole and racism. When Sky News interviewed Stefano Domenicali,
Yes.
right? And they just kept using the word abuse. I said this 2 podcasts ago. I'm tired of these euphemisms. It's happening in football with Deshaun Watson. Use the words. I understand that people don't want to hear about what Deshaun Watson did, but I'm pretty sure that you and I don't go to work every day and expect that to happen to us.
Right.
And so I think that's the same thing. When you just say, oh, it's abuse, it's abuse. No, you call it what it is and you do something about it. But the second that Domenicali says something and he gives that words and he says men were pulling women's skirts up over their heads and everybody thought that was okay. The second he says that, then he has to do something about it. So we use these euphemisms.
Did you say that you said, did you say that he said everyone thought that was okay?
No, what he just kept saying was the word abuse.
Okay.
If you don't label what abuse is, it becomes like, again, I said about, Dan Snyder's toxic environment. They become these things. Oh, Deshaun Watson, well, he's a terrible person behaving badly. Do you really want to know what he did? I don't think that's just what we would all call behaving badly. I know this isn't a football podcast.
Yeah, I don't know that story, and I don't know the details in that story.
All right,
I'll take your analogy. I don't know it.
I just think that when you are pushed by a broadcaster and all the response is, well, I don't know, we'll do something about it. And Simon just let it drop. I really just was like, I don't know. If Natalie Pinkham had asked that question, would you have just let it drop? I don't know. Would she just have let it drop? What is with this polite behavior that we have that's just like, oh, racism happens, abuse happens? It's not. If we don't actually state what it is that happened that everybody's upset about, it's never going to change. And unfortunately, these are often abuses towards women. And we don't talk about it and we don't label it. We just brush it off as men behaving badly. I even used that phrase 5 seconds ago, right? We use these terms of phrases.
Yeah, so
call it what it
totally
is.
Agree. Totally agree. And nobody thinks that kind of behavior is good, acceptable, right, or okay. And it's an anathema. And no woman should go to a Formula One race and think that is something that is going to happen or acceptable, right?
That's right.
And having a vehicle to try to do something about that, I think is great. All
and
right?
what are they going to do? I think that's the thing.
I don't know. That is the thing for me. It's one thing to say I can report them or I can report them on Twitter.
But I think even at that, like there aren't, you're all jammed in there. And I, as a woman, if I had experienced that, who you're going to report that to? You're the minority. I've never been at a race where I felt like, oh, look at all these ladies. I always joke at races that it's the only time there's no line for the women's bathroom because the men are all in line and there's no line for the women's bathroom, right? Because there's 5 of us there. And even though there are more women at races now than there used to be, it's still, we're still not in the majority. So when you're surrounded by a bunch of men, are you really going to be like, oh, I'm going to go tell somebody, please don't do that? No, you just try to be small and hope that everybody leaves you alone.
Yeah, I understand that. And having some sort of vehicle where you could solicit the help of F1, their promoters, their security, I think is an important element to that.
So I think that Austria, but if they're never going to look at track security, they're never going to look at the ushers. Like, I know exactly if I'm at a Wizards game and something happens, I go and get the usher. That's their job. And the usher comes down and they talk to the drunk dudes, right? Because it doesn't happen as much at basketball, but it definitely happens at football because every pre-games beforehand. But I know exactly what I'm doing. And I'm not going to say something because you're going to turn on me because you're a bunch of guys and I'm a woman. But at least if I get that usher, I have access to security. I have access to some sort of outlet and protection that isn't just going to get more abuse put on me. So and you don't have that at a racetrack. You have the one person checking your tickets at the bottom of the steps and that's it. There's I've never seen or maybe they're at the bottom of the stands or something. There's just not like that kind of security at any track I've been to, and I don't know what it's like in Austria.
So this is my point. This is an element that is new to F1 for this sort of brazen, blatant stuff going on. Because I've been going to races my whole life. This doesn't happen, and it's not acceptable, and it's not the norm, right? As a matter of fact, I've actually seen guys almost get in a fight because some things were being said. and there were women and children around, and it was foul language, and it was really ticking some other guys off. And they're, hey, it's a family sport. Shut up and sit down, you know? And they weren't putting up with it. It's not fair to assume that every man in that grandstand is a dress flipper and that every woman is a target in that stand, because that is not Formula One. That does not happen. And when it does, it should be addressed.
I think as a woman, I agree with your first statement that not every man is a dress flipper, but I'm not sure I agree with your second statement that every woman isn't a target, but I guess I see your point.
I go to a race. I was just at Indianapolis. Go to a race. I didn't sit in that grandstand and look at all the women's as targets.
You didn't.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But that's you. I know you. You didn't. That doesn't.
Most guys are
everybody.
like that.
Okay.
Are you saying that the majority of men?
I'm not. It doesn't take a majority.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
No, but you're making it sound like, oh, you know. I don't think it's oh, you know.
No, it's not a no, you know statement. No, I'm agreeing with you. I do think that having some sort of vehicle, some way to solicit help in those situations from security and those kind of things, when things get off their rails, is really important. What my original statement is this is a whole new element to F1 that we haven't seen before. And it's not good enough to say, oh, it's just always been that way. Nobody talked about it. No. When, and let me give you an example. What happened when fans turned up to preseason testing in Spain with blackface on? What happened in Formula One?
That was terrible.
What happened? What did F1 do?
Not a thing.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Max Mosley, the FIA, said that will not happen. We will not put up with that. And if it happens again at the second test, Formula One will cancel the races in Spain. We will not come to Spain.
There you go.
Boom. Did they show up with blackface? No.
Well, then Dominicali needs to step the heck up.
So my point is that Formula One has done some pretty significant things around racism in the past. I think they're trying to do that too, and I think with Lewis's leadership too, I think he's been very vocal about it.
I do think there's been good things happening. I'm not saying they're doing nothing, but I think
to your point, which I think is important, is because Drive to Survive has really grown the sport. There's a lot more women at Formula One now, a lot more. You know, if you look at the Sky Sports. I was listening to Ted Kravitz in one of his notebooks. I don't know, a couple of days ago.
Yeah. It was
remember? And he was talking about how many more women were at this race.
And families.
Yeah. Awesome. It's awesome. But what we don't need is a throng of all kinds of new hooliganism and hooligan fans to come in the sport, because that was not the crowd in Formula One in 1993.
If I wanted that, I'll go to a football game, but
it was not the crowd. And that was what my original statement was about Formula One, is that
I think it's very Austria.
I don't know. I've never been to Austria. But that's just not the Formula One that I've grown up with since the early 70s. I'm not saying there weren't altercations. Of course there were.
I just expect, maybe wrongly, that you know, if you're going to have these initiatives, then you need to call it what it is.
I don't disagree with that at all, Grace. And I think, because that was what my question was, it's like they put out that video, right? And they were like, hey, we're going to have this, you know, we're not going to put up with it. We're going to have these ways to contact. And I thought, but put yourself in the woman's shoe for a minute. Let's say you're out there and someone does something like, you know, something that is misogynistic or list of the dress or, you know, or God forbid touches you or whatever it might be. How does that get reported in a timely manner to whom, and how can you get immediate action on that? Because if you're just sending a message in, how does that help if a lot of time goes by because the people are going to leave, and then you say, well, all you got to do is get a picture of him? Well, that puts the woman in an even a worse scenario where she's got to go try to get a picture of the offender, right?
You try to be small and hope they leave you alone.
Yeah,
that's really your only option.
Right. That's not right. I agree with you. There needs to be some confidence behind that program to know that there's some efficacy to it and it works.
You can't soft shoe these things. Maybe that's all I'm trying to say here.
I agree with you.
Domenicali, if you're, I guess, and I'm not trying to attack you, even though you're the other person that I'm having this conversation with. I don't mean you, Todd. I'm just saying that I think that Domenicali, it's enough. I mean, we've talked about this all ad nauseum last season because, again, the NFL did the same thing. Let's just put words on the back of our helmets and we'll paint the end zone at racism. It's taken care of, right? Like, it's not. It doesn't. Who doesn't know these things happen? You're going to have to do something about it. You're going to have to put some teeth behind these words. Putting out videos, who cares?
Right.
Do something.
Right. Yeah, and that's the question. It's what's to be done, right?
Of which he said nothing. He was just like, I don't know, we're working on it, and they let it go.
Right.
Great.
Right. Yeah, and that's why, and I mentioned that about the blackface in Spain, because Max Mosley took that damn seriously.
Yeah.
And he shut down in a heartbeat, as he should.
Unacceptable.
So I think it would take that kind of dogged determination to put up with it and to try to come to a solution with it. But I agree with you in the turn. This kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier on. We were talking about Lewis and the platforms and stuff like that. Just sort of kind of talking around an issue becomes vacuous. After a little while. There's.
I think you need both. I think the thing is that people often ask like why protest? What does protesting do? What does marching do? Right? Like what if you get a bunch of people together, you protest on a thing, because you need all of these things. Because some part of that protesting is that you're not alone, right? That other people feel the same way you do. All of these people feel the same way you do, and you can stand behind a cause. But no, that's not going to change legislation. That's not going to change laws. And until you change laws, things aren't going to change, right? I can protest all I want. That's not the purpose of a protest. And so I think there's some point
protest
that you
is
need...
a different, protest is a little different scale than what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just using a platform for awareness. I mean, it's kind of like, I think when Susan B. Komen, group came out with the pink ribbons, I mean, everybody's for that, but it became so I mean, who's for breast cancer?
Nobody.
One.
Right.
Nobody's for breast cancer, and the awareness. I think everybody gets it, so really raising money to raise awareness. How about raising money for a cure,
But I don't think, I agree with you. So I'll say like on a scale of 1 to 10, you do need discussion on social media. You do need to raise awareness, but it shouldn't be the 9. If you have 10 things to do, 9 of them shouldn't be talking about it on social media.
Yep,
Maybe
agreed.
2 of the things are. So I do think, I guess that's what I was trying to say with the protesting. There is a place for that, and it does serve a purpose. It just shouldn't be the only thing you do out of those 10 things. It shouldn't be 9 of the things you do.
Yeah. So, and that's to my point.
All of these things are needed.
I think there's a lot of people doing 9s. That's my point.
Right. And I think, and so I'm agreeing with you. And I think that's the thing is that's great. You painted the end zone and racism. That's one of your 9. Do something.
You got one more.
Right.
You've done 1. You get 2 out of 9.
That's right. And so I do think there's a place for discussion and dialogue and bringing awareness to things, but that can't be the only thing you do.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I agree.
And I think it's the reason I'm dwelling on this and sorry to drag this out in the end of the podcast.
It's too late. They have to listen to it.
Yeah, but these are topics. I mean, it's the success of Formula One. I think they were up. I don't know how many millions they were up in the first half of the year. But the success of Formula One, it brings all kinds, and you benefit by the success of Formula One, but it doesn't come without its challenges.
Nope, that's right.
And I think you start to drag a lot of people into Formula One that are swept up in the entertainment of the marketing that come into Formula One. Maybe they bring their type of fan, behavior and those kind of things. And it's just not really a place in Formula One. They used to joke that, Formula One and NASCAR is like Budweiser and Formula One's like champagne. And they used to joke and, the snobbery of Formula One and all
Yes.
that sort of thing. And I just think a lot of this roguish behavior is very base behavior, and it's not indicative of Formula One. And it's a Formula One I'm not familiar with, and I've watched it for decades. And I think when I see people come in and they're very adamant about causes, whether it's like Seb's causes or Lewis's or women in Formula One and those kind of things. There's a hell of a lot of room in all those margins and all those discussions to have a conversation about. And I find that a lot of them could be really heavy-handed or ham-fisted in the approach and sort of castigate Formula One as a whole, and say, it's always, Formula One is this and it's horrible. There's too much that's gone before, to discount it and to make broad statements about, because some of the accusations are like, gosh, we get to this sport and find out it's all a bunch of, hooligans in Formula One. No, that came with the new excitement around Formula One. That's not a legacy thing. But we have a listener that's been a long time listener, who's Dutch, and was talking about Austria, and he said, he and his wife go there and they wouldn't go back. They wouldn't go there.
Yeah, like I said, that is certainly, I've never had that experience at any of the races I've been, but
right. So I just think,
Austria.
I think it's just I'm reading a lot of very broad brushstrokes
I think
about Formula One that
think
I
we
don't
all
think
have-
are fair.
we all have to keep in mind there are no monoliths, right? So
Yeah,
as you were saying earlier, we can't say all men be like this, all women
No.
be like this, white people be like this, black people be like this. There are no monoliths. But we do have to call attention to where things happen. If it's something that was very targeted at Austria, then that needs to be discussed. And I guess I would hope that Dominicali is discussing that behind closed doors, because he's certainly not discussing him in front of those doors.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that system works,
Like, because you didn't know that somebody was going to ask you about that. They literally just played the video and they
Yeah.
cut to you talking to Simon Lasby, and you didn't think Simon was going to say, so what are you doing about this abuse that you just showed us this video about?
Right.
And he had
right.
no answer that was
Yeah.
anything discernible. Really? That's what your PR people are preparing
Yeah.
you for? What kind of
Yeah, you got to
organization
have
are
an
you running?
answer,
So-
So-
they're going to ask you that. That's going to come up. I mean, I
just-
don't know.
I feel like all of this success ultimately will be F1's undoing if we're going to keep up
I mean, it was NASCAR's undoing. I mean, I guess
tearing
that's,
it all apart.
that's what I fear the most.
You
Is
know?
it's like,
It's pretty easy to go back and crucify and judge dead guys from history in Formula One.
yeah,
I think that's a cheap parlor trick.
Yes.
I think
are you speaking of Mosley? Is that
any of those legendary.
because Bernie's still alive, as far as I know?
Yeah, well, as far as I know too. But yeah, that's a cheap parlor trick. I think more to the point, it's about what's effective in Formula One, without castigating it, and keeping it going in the right direction. To your point, if you're going to come out with a film talking about this kind of behavior and how it's unacceptable, then what is the process for that? Just need to think through that.
I think even a I don't know, I'd still charge whatever. At the end of the race last season, right, in Abu Dhabi,
Yeah.
and I don't know, the controversy, right, that
Yes.
happened there, right?
Wait a minute, what controversy? Oh,
I don't know, right? We forgot about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I remember again saying in my household, like, I'm not surprised by any of this, right? That's how rulemaking happens in Formula One. And there's some sort of acceptance that I took of like, we complain about every week, like there's no consistent stewards. The race director has too much say. Maybe, like We've had a million podcasts where we've talked about these issues, and it like all came to head in one race. And I was just like, I get you guys are new to this, but that's sort of how it works. And it was like, but should it be how it works? No, right? And I think that's the thing. And I think
Yeah.
you know, that comes with some of that spotlight of new fans is the things that I've accepted as, well, that's Formula One. That's how stewarding works in this sport. Maybe that isn't how stewarding should work in this sport. And it's about darn time that there's been enough people that have gone, wait, this is how you run your sport? And we don't have to just accept it.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's things that Formula One can, and from, like you said, from stewarding to the process to social issues, whatever it is, fan engagement, ticket price, everything associated with it. I think you can take a look at. Just, you know, are we doing the best we can? You know, on this process. That what we
all try to do, right? At
it is. But you know, if it isn't, you know, look, if Formula One isn't ticking all the boxes for you as a fan, then maybe it's not your sport, you know? But tearing it apart and engaging in some of the heinous conversations and commentary, it's really silly.
I think the thing is that there's always noise, right? And I guess that's the thing is that I don't want you to be throwing the baby out with the bathwater because of the noise.
Yeah, no, I don't think I am. You know, I'm all for.
I don't think you are
Formula
either.
One. Yeah, I'm all for. You and I have been saying that forever.
9,000 podcasts together. I know that, but I guess
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that yes, there's always people who are noise that just say extreme things, but people can't get wrapped into those extreme things and then go, but we're not going to talk about it at all. So not every man does this to every woman, but that doesn't mean we don't talk about it. Just because somebody came out and said something extreme, and it's at a 10.
Yeah. No, I think, delivery apart, you know, whether it's an issue or not, you know, you could talk about it, regardless of how the delivery is, and that's true from a lot of the email and stuff I get. You know, I mean, I get a lot of hate mail from Hamilton fans.
Most of it comes from me, but that's all right.
Yeah, right. Which is really, you know, it's weird because, you know, then I've got a lot of been accused of being a total Hamilton sycophant and all that. And so, you know, you get a lot of this extreme on both sides of it,
right,
with no one realizing, well, if half the listeners think I'm a Hamilton sycophant and the other half think I'm a Hamilton hater and racist, maybe the reality is I'm just kind of trying to be even-handed about it. You know, I praise Lewis when he deserves it. I call him out when I think he's wrong. It is what it is. And if you've listened long enough, you know Ferrari's my team, but I'm the first person to take a ball bat to Ferrari when I think, you know, they screw it up.
They do it so they lay it out on a platter for
you.
They
do. They make it so easy for me, you know?
Right?
It's so easy. But yeah, you know, I just feel like there's so much more amped up anger and angst and anxiety in Formula One now, and just, you know, lots of hateful things being said, and it's really unfortunate because
I mean,
in its purest form, it's just not the Formula One I know.
I agree. You know? I mean, I think that, you know, when Michael Massey spoke about getting death threats, I think anytime, like,
it's ridiculous.
I see how he made the decision he made as a human being. Does that mean that's the decision I think he should have made, or that's the decision I agree with? No, those can be different things. But that also doesn't mean that if I saw him, I'd cause him harm. That's, you know what I mean? Like, so
it's ridiculous.
I do think that there's absolutely this place where it's just like, I can say, hey, Michael, like if I saw Michael Massey in a bar, which first of all would be hilarious. If I saw him in a bar, it would be like, what the hell, man? And that would be that. And then we'd laugh and we'd move on. You know, we'd tell like Niki Lauda stories or something and move on with our lives. But I think that there are very few people you should, if any, that you should send death threats to. That's a terrible thing. It's terrible. Right?
But that's the spirit of what I'm saying. I mean, sending a death, you know, all these death threats to Michael Massey, that's just horrible. I mean, the guy's a human. Just the same that the woman in the grandstand had her dress lifted.
Yeah.
That's somebody's daughter, wife, mother, whatever. I don't remember how old she was, but that's someone's loved one, for God's sake.
That's a human being
It's
that
a
you
human
treated this
being.
way. Mhm.
I mean, for crying out loud, that's pathetic. And it's the same with Michael Massey. It's the same death threats and
Yes,
all of
'cause
that
it
kind of
is-
crap.
It is
I mean,
removing their human dignity
Yes,
from them. It is
yes.
viewing them as an object.
It's exactly
and
right.
That is
And-
always a problem. Mhm.
And it is. And so, but we've had these, conversations in past, maybe not in this kind of depth, but
Right.
it is beginning to frustrate me a little bit about F1 because it's taking, a lot of incoming over,
I think
and
I
it's it's just not a description of Formula One that I know of. And I think it's lazy and it's too easy to do that. And I think, I think Formula One, to your point, you and I've been watching a long time. You've been watching a long time, contextually. But yes, programs and those kind of things, addressing those issues, there's nothing wrong with that. They should be. If there's opportunities, that's great. But yeah, it's time for everybody to grow the hell up. That's my opinion. All right, I'm getting off soapbox now. Sorry.
Oh, it was good.
But tell us what your opinion is, and we'll go from there. All right, that does it for.
Especially if Todd is a Lewis Hamilton fan or not a Hamilton fan. Those are his
I
favorite
like
emails.
Lewis. He's
so-
fine. He's fine. When he, but hey, I'll tell you, I thought it was a jerk move to be flown over a Turkish opera portraying Zeus in your McLaren racing outfit.
That's the
It was
greatest
a bad
moment.
move. It
That
was a
was
bad
great.
move, PR move anyway. For entertainment value, it was awesome.
I'm just
But,
glad that somebody found picture evidence of that because
I
that literally should
See,
never be forgotten.
That incident is almost like the Max Mosley Spankgate thing. They've almost purged all of the image from Google search. You can
thank
hardly
God.
find it. I have a picture of it, but you can hardly find it. So,
Of Lewis Hamilton or Max Mosley?
of Max, no, not Max, of Lewis flying over Turkish. I don't want a picture of Max. Trust me, I do not want
I
that.
know, but you said those both together. I just wanted
Yeah.
to clarify.
I'd
Yes.
be reporting that to F1's Twitter thing if I
I
had
will
that.
say that I mentioned this I think 2 weeks ago that there is a part of me now that has almost gotten used to the fact that when ESPN and the ticker shows Formula One that I
Yeah.
won't like hold my breath.
I know,
because
'cause
it's
you're
gonna be
waiting.
terrible.
I know.
I'm like, okay, we're deep breath. It's going to take me a while to get over that
Yes.
because we've been doing this longer than now a lot of those podcast people have been alive and I don't
I know,
like the
I
wrinkles
know.
just form every time somebody
I know.
says those kind of things. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I know, it's been a long time. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I think it's good. So, it's a summer break. Certainly, I think it'd be a great idea, if you want to give Formula One feedback on ways that you think they can address some of these issues, their no tolerance program. If you feel like that there's some good ideas you might have on how to try, because I think Grace is right. I think if you are a fan at a race, how does that process work exactly? Somebody needs to unpack that for fans a little bit more, certainly for fans that are women that are there. How does that program work? What does that look like? When are, reach out to Formula One and share your
Also-
thing. Because I think those are all legit things. I just
Also-
don't think we need to consider all of the legacy veteran F1 fans as the people doing it, because it's not.
I think also, and it doesn't matter in some ways, right? I agree that we shouldn't just be painting the sport as all terrible, just like we shouldn't paint
Yeah.
all race directors terrible because Michael Massey did a terrible thing or whatever, even though the current race directors, that's a whole nother podcast. But I think that you're not the only ones dealing with this Formula One, just like racism. You're not the only ones dealing with this.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
reach out to the other sports that deal with this as well and figure something out.
Yeah, that's good.
You're not the first people to have experienced this.
Right. So, give Formula One some feedback. Why not? They said reach out to him, so I think it would be great.
Domenicali listens to this podcast, so
He's
consider
listening.
My feedback sent.
That's right. So, all right, that wraps it up. We will be back next week to do it all over again. Share your opinion. Just do it with quorum civility as always. and that means no personal texting. Grace and I had a lovely conversation. We shared a couple things. No one got out of line. That's decorum and civility, right? And you can do that at theparcfermé.com. Share your comments. If you like the podcast, go over to iTunes, give some love over there, give us a good rating. And a huge thank you to our Patreon and supporters, because we could not and would not do this podcast without you. Until next week, when we come back to do it all over again, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camper, saying so long. Grace?
See you next week.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.